in that moment, I learned the lesson of you don't have to sit there and take it, and in terms of someone giving you energy like that.
What an amazing lesson. How old were you?
Amazing. I was about six, 7.
Years old.
Acting when it's easy is like easy and anyone can do it. When it's hard, that's when you become the actor. When the work isn't there, when things are feeling a little bit more bare boned,
Hello and welcome to Shaping Success, a brand new and very exciting podcast from Simply Be, all about women at the top of their game with me, Fleur East. As a singer and broadcaster, I'm inspired by women who push boundaries, women who have carved a different path to society's stereotypes, women who refuse to fit in. And I want to find out who and what shaped their journey to success. So, in this podcast series, I'm joined by female icons from all walks of life to talk about their inspirations, heroes, and the moments that changed them. We'll hear from some of the biggest female names and the ones you might know less about as they share their remarkable stories of determination and dedication and reveal the moments and icons that have shaped them along the way. Ultimately, our guests all have one thing in common. They're killing it. So let's meet them. In this final episode of the series, I'm joined by one of the most versatile women we've had on the podcast so far. Not only has Zawe Ashton played a wide range of engaging characters on both stage and screen, but she's successfully turned her hand to directing, writing, and producing too. As one of Britain's most cherished actors, many of her roles have broadened the conversation around underserved issues and given a voice to those without a platform. With such a breadth of work, one thing is clear: she is a master storyteller. So, what is the secret to building a diverse career and pushing yourself professionally? Let's find out. Welcome to Shaping Success, Zawe Ashton.
Fleur, thank you. That's the best intro I've ever had. I'm proud of myself after hearing that intro.
You've achieved a lot.
Thank you so much.
You really have. And we're here to dig deep and find out how you even got to this place you're at in your life.
I'm ready to dig. And I do have to say to you, as I said off camera, you are literally such an icon for me.
What?
From X Factor.
Oh, wow.
Which we loved. I still can't hear Uptown Funk without seeing your performance. I actually see your performance whenever I hear that song. So thank you for that. And also Strictly.
Yes.
I live in a very, very Strictly obsessed household.
Right, okay.
And you and Vito were just absolutely outstanding.
Thank you.
Amazing. And again, when I hear Feeling Hot, I see your samba.
Feeling hot.
I literally had such a body roll. I can see your samba in my mind's eye. You were so stunning. And you also just dealt with every bit of critique. Some that felt fair, some that did not feel fair, in my opinion. Okay, I don't work for the BBC. I don't have to be neutral. I thought you just dealt with it in the most beautiful way. And you were such an example of what it is to just be professional, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Stunning.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. What a way to start.
I can't believe I'm talking to you.
But enough about me.
I can't believe it's you. It's really you.
So cool. I want to know how it all began, because you got into acting very young.
Yes.
So tell me about where you grew up. You grew up in East London. Tell me about what you were like as a young child.
I did. I'm Hackney born and bred. And
from Walthamstow. So
Walthamstow.
Fellow East Londoner.
Stowe. I mean, come on. When we go back now, I don't know if you still live there.
Yeah.
And you're just like, the Hackney that I grew up in is kind of long gone. But I suppose what really shaped me coming from there is this sense of activism. Stoke Newington especially was a very active sort of socialist area, really. We were a very socialist borough. And so there was an energy there when I started to sort of get into more creative enterprises like bits of dance and then join the Anna Scher Theatre, where I sort of started the acting journey specifically. I feel like there was always a kind of tenacity in me, even as a child. So yeah, I suppose, how did it start for me? It started in a very real way. It was never Like I want to be, I don't know, tap dancing and like, you know, the old adage, tits and teeth, which obviously you cannot even think about describing a child as doing, you know. But, you know, it was never about being like a theatre kid, but it was about storytelling and storytelling with meaning. And yeah, and I found the best way to do that for me as a child going to these drama classes was to actively be in them and to be kind of figuring it out from a practical standpoint, using your voice and your body and communicating in that way.
How did you get into drama class then? Did you choose to go, or did your parents like encourage that?
No, I just had too much energy. And I've said this, I just had so much energy as a child. And so my poor mum, I mean, she was sort of in charge of the after school stuff. And a friend's sister had been to the Anna Scher Theatre School, which was in Islington. So not far, and was, I think, 50p a class at that time that I started. Yeah, it was a hugely affordable, community-based space, really. It was as much about getting children occupied and having purpose and off the streets. That's how Anna started it, really, in the 60s when Islington was quite a rough place, and it was a place for children to go and be safe. It was such a hodgepodge of things. You would go, you would do the classes, there would be kids, there'd be older kids, there'd be adult classes, you'd be doing improvisation, you'd be reading poetry. Anna was someone who described herself as an integrationist. She's like an Irish, Jewish, Lithuanian. Yeah. I mean, all about the putting the act into activism was her thing. And so she would have us like learn a new word every week when we got there, because Winston Churchill learned a new word every day of his adult life, and she thought that was important for us. So you literally had kids from every intersection that you can imagine being guided by this by this incredible, energetic teacher who just believed that if you came and wanted to act, that was fine, but she wouldn't let you leave without also gaining some knowledge and insight into the world and into just the roots of community, which is theatre, really.
So it just started as kind of, okay, this kid's got way too much energy.
Go there.
Let's just put her in something.
It'll be an hour and she'll be worn out by the end.
She'll be worn out. She could go to bed tonight.
Yeah. Little did my mum know, it was probably the most energising thing that I could have done, because I think literally after my first class, I knew that I wanted to be an actor.
Did you?
Yeah. It's a very strange thing to experience as a 6-year-old. And one of my favourite actors is an actor called Jack Lemmon, who's sadly no longer with us. But I remember seeing a documentary with him, and he was like, I knew what I wanted to do age 8, and that did make me very strange, and that did mark me out as being quite a weird child. But I just knew that I'd found a home.
So we want to know about the moments that have helped shape you in your career. Now, there are countless credits that I could list right now of all the fantastic work that you've done. But right now there's a strike going on, isn't there? That
there is.
Prevents us from going deeper into that. Can you just explain what's actually happening at the moment?
There is. I am a very proud member of SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, over in the States. If you've worked in the States, you will most likely be a member of SAG. And we are currently on strike in support of the writers who are also on strike for a countless list of reasons that I won't necessarily go into now. But it's about equity, and it's about respect, and it's about people being able to work and live in an industry that is booming and getting bigger with streaming and huge studios, and so it's a power to the little guy moment, which I'm very much in support of. And maybe I can come back on the podcast and hopefully say we won, and then talk about all the screen stuff that's going on.
Well, the thing is, luckily here we want to learn about all the moments that have shaped you and got you to this place.
Yeah.
So we can look into that. I want to know of a positive moment maybe that's happened that a lot of people won't know about, that has shaped you.
Having a defunct TV pilot script that I had written, being cast out by production companies, as is often the way, and falling into the hands of a book agent who then approached me about writing a book and said, look, I've read this pilot that apparently isn't going to happen, but I would love you to write something from the point of view of this character that you've written. It was kind of a show about a woman having an existential crisis, essentially. And I was like, I would never have thought of doing this ever in my life. I mean, ever. My attention span is 3 seconds maximum, probably. Like, think of Dory and Finding Nemo. You're
doing well so far.
I'm doing well
today.
Just managed to chop up that coffee before we started. And so I was presented with probably the biggest challenge in my life. I feel like book writing is probably arguably the highest art form, one of the highest art forms, definitely the most tricky. And sitting down with, again, that encouragement, with that permission from this random woman who's now my beloved book agent, Eugenie, what started to happen was I was able to start writing myself a new chapter in my own life, which was really powerful. It took me a very long time to write. So much happened when I was writing it over the course of like 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, nearly 3 years. I started to describe the book as the cockroach of the nuclear disaster of my life, because at one point it was the only thing alive. I was like, everything else is burnt to the ground.
Everything has been sacrificed.
I have this book still to write in my, notes on my computer. And so things like Me Too happened in that time. That was one of the things that I didn't realize I was very, very much spiritually struggling with as an actor. I was just like, look, there's a lot of pendulums that feel like they're ready to swing, which is the diversity and representation pendulum, which we now know is swinging a lot more than it was. The generally be nice to women pendulum that wasn't quite swinging enough for me at one point. And I just thought, I can't... There's something that feels off. I can't align myself. My values, goals, and dreams are not aligning. And if you follow any life coaches, that's sort of the first thing that they say, isn't it? If you feel like a stuckness, then there's probably some gap between those three things. So I thought, right, what am I going to do here? And being presented with the opportunity to write this book, which ended up being categorized as a kind of memoir, like an offbeat memoir, a kind of fictionalized memoir, because I knew that I wanted to use pieces of my own life, certainly pieces of the reality of the industry that I had experienced so far. But I knew that, again, being an actor, that there should be this fictional narrative that kind of weaves itself through. I realized, okay, I'm challenging all of these things that feel off within me. I want to explore the reasons why there are these parts of the industry that still feel so wrong to me and that I keep bumping up against. And so halfway through, I was supposed to give the book in. I was late, stuff was going on. And thank goodness I was, because the Me Too movement happened. Right. The very brave whistleblowers who started to come forward, certainly in the case of, the producer Harvey Weinstein, things like that, started to happen. And suddenly that was another flow. I was like, oh, people actually might want to hear about this. People might want to talk about this. Things are cracking open a little bit. So I got to the end of the book and I'd moved out of London. I decided to stop acting at that point. I'd changed my life completely and shuffled the cards for myself of how I wanted to engage with the industry. And I couldn't have done that without the book. Because when we write, we're expressing and able to edit our thoughts and feelings. And it was the biggest dose of therapy that I think I probably could have had. And it was free, so I sat down at the laptop.
Well, exactly.
And I did it.
It sounds like a real magical experience, actually, you writing that book. It changed a lot for you.
It did. And I would encourage anyone who is struggling in any way to put pen to paper, it really is so powerful. The pen is so mighty.
It's nice to get an insight into what you were feeling and like the emotional journey through that as well.
Because also the book is called Character Breakdown. I'm definitely not here to publicise my book that about 18 people read, which is fine, because that is not the point of writing books for me. It's like the legacy of having a book on a shelf was just like, probably 19, and including mum. And it's called Character Breakdown because one of the moments where I realised I know what I'm going to write about is I was supposed to go for an audition, and character breakdowns are what they give you when you go for an audition. It's literally the breakdown of the character that you're going to play, and lots of women will identify in my industry that these can be one of the most sad, distressing, backward descriptions of women, real or imagined, that that you could possibly read and it be like legal and okay. So I was going for this audition to play like a sciencey character, and I kept getting called back, and they were like, can she just wear something that just shows her body a little bit more? And I'm like,
oh wow,
won't I just be wearing a lab coat? Is this where
what's this got
have
to
I
do
got
with-
science wrong in the script? Like, she doesn't seem to need to wear a cat suit to do the old biology at this point. But that's what the process started to become more and more about.
Okay.
And I just thought, I can't do this. And so the name of the book was born, and the headings for each chapter are sort of based on a different, very much real character breakdowns that have crossed my path. And again, that was a way of saying this is part of what I do that I just can't condone anymore, and I need to explore that.
So you decided to move away from acting around that time.
Yeah.
What brought you back to it then?
Oh God, so many things. Again, it was so strange. I mean, anyone out there who has tried this manifesting thing, which I haven't yet, by the way, I'm so interested in it, and well, I can do it because I did it with the book. But
you did it.
Things that started to come my way that felt like they were very much meant for me got me back, because I was engaging with the work in a very different way. So, I ended up doing a play called Betrayal that ended up coming along really out of sheer serendipity. I did a reading with my now fiance Tom, and we just thought that's going to be a 15-minute reading at a gala of a scene from a play that we both really love, and Jamie Lloyd, the director, had selected for us. And then everyone was like, oh, why don't you do the play? That was really great. And it wasn't planned. It was very organic, and ended up being probably one of the most important, certainly acting experiences in my life, because again, it just came from this place of, I'm meant for this. There's work that we choose to do. There's work that we're
Chosen for.
With the work that we're chosen for and meant for. And I, mentioned to you earlier that I volunteer a lot of my time now talking to young actors about their first steps and their first foray into this industry. And if I had back then had someone say to me, you do get to choose, it would have been really powerful. But again, these things you learn with time.
Yeah, because I guess in the beginning you're like, I need all the credits, I need to do all the work, whatever opportunity comes, I need to just grab it.
Yeah.
There's that sense of like, there's that hunger.
Yeah.
That kind of clouds your judgment, I guess, in the beginning.
Absolutely. And again, it can intersect with who you are as a person. Some of the best advice that I've ever got as an actor is the things that you struggle with as a person will be the things that you struggle with as an actor. And I didn't understand that for a really long time. Like, for example, I couldn't cry on cue as an actor for a really long time. And I was like, oh, God. I guess I'm just going to be one of those actors who can't cry. It just won't work then. There's like loads of girls who can cry, and I'm like the non-crier over here. I was like, why? Again, it didn't click immediately, but I got to a point suddenly where I was like, I don't cry as me.
Oh.
I don't cry.
That's really interesting.
I bottle and I store and I put a brave face on. And that needed to change before I could access that in the work. And so to your point, I think there's something within us sometimes, I'll speak on behalf of myself, sometimes something within me as a woman, like firstborn child, again, you know, like coming to the industry without, you know, people who could like tell you what to do, you know, there was always this real attachment to being chosen. Being a biracial child in the 80s, you know, everyone being like, who are you? What are you? Like, very like mistrusting, like, you know, who you are. We don't have language for you yet. We don't have language for lots of things, but there was this attachment to being chosen that was feeding into my relationship to the work as well, which is so, again, important to speak to young people about. You know, you are your work as an actor. You turn up as your body, as your soul, as your everything is your work. There weirdly enough isn't usually a separation that you can make. You think you can for a long time. Sometimes it feels like you can, but actually not really. That's been my experience.
That's really interesting to hear that, because I would have just assumed, I mean, naively or whatever, because I'm not in the industry, I guess. And I haven't studied acting to your level.
But you're a performer, you're an artist, you know.
I would think, though, that, okay, I'm playing this role, I now just switch into this role. I wouldn't think that anything that I've experienced, unless the character it has some sort of likeness to an experience I'd been through, I would just think, all right, just turn on the acting hat and then the tears come and it happens. But that's interesting that you explain that because you didn't cry personally, you couldn't turn it on.
That was my experience. And I think lots of people are acting in different ways and doing the job in different ways, especially today. Like, I go and speak to young actors now and they're like, yeah, like we just do self-tapes all the time. And how do we do that? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm the worst self-taper of all time. I balance my iPhone on top of some saucepans and hope for the best. And they have studios like this. And then just like, yeah, you know, we've got our backdrop. And I'm like, wow. So I'm aware, I'm speaking from my own experience and trying to make the personal universal in some way. But in terms of, like you said, like the wanting to people please, like the wanting to be chosen, just like I'll do anything to just you know, be working or be like accepted. That was something that was also happening within me, you know. And the people pleaser is someone I've really had to like take to the side and speak to a lot over life, because it's too exhausting. You should do everything you can when you're a young actor. You should get out there. You should get experience. There's absolutely nothing like experience. But at the same time, try and instill a value system within as a compass, because there are better conversations happening around the safety of people on sets and in the work that we do. But actually, it's still a very... I don't know, it can be like the Wild West, you know? And if you know inside, actually, this is my dial, and I know when to say no, I know when to create boundaries, I know when that work is not meant for me, even though I want experience, actually there's something that feels problematic there, or something that's going to trigger me, or something that's going to leave me less than when I came. If you can have that as an actor, I think it's very powerful, but you have to get it from my perspective as a person first.
Thinking of moments, is there a negative moment in particular that you can think of that has also equally impacted you?
It's so interesting because the negative, maybe people have said this before, the negative moments that I'm thinking of have been the most positive.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like,
yeah. There's always a lesson.
The lessons, amazing. Failure just as good as success, if not better sometimes. A very key one that springs to mind, and, you know, we're talking a lot about kind of youth, childhood, is when I was about 6 years old and had been scouted, I think, in a store, like a department store, so, to go and be in like a little modelling show.
Okay.
Which I was just so keen to do. Again, I was a Barbie, you know, kind of fanatic, and like, I was like, oh my God, this is something Barbie would do. And went along to meet the sort of head of this sort of casting agency, I'm guessing at the time, with my mum. I think I've got this story right. And we got there and we were talking to the head of the agency because they'd asked us to go. And the very much adult woman ended up just saying, oh, well, you know, she'll never work with that gap in her teeth. And so two things happened, I suppose, in that moment. One being, I remember sort of thinking, whatever mum does now is the thing. Like, whatever, I don't know how to respond to this.
Right.
So whatever mum does is how this is going to work out.
Okay.
And she just picked me up by the hand instantly and we walked immediately through that door. So in that moment, I learned the lesson of you don't have to sit there and take it, and in terms of someone giving you energy like that.
What an amazing lesson. How old were you?
Amazing. I was about six, 7.
Years old.
Really tiny. And then another thing that happened was this kind of rush of love for myself and the authentic way that I look. And my mum was safeguarding that and protecting that in the face of someone who was trying to tear that down. And that's definitely, that formed a rock against which so many waves have broken, because the microaggressions towards women in general, women of colour more specifically, in the industry that I've very much chosen to be in, no one dragged me, I very, very much chosen this path. They're so real and they're so frequent and they're still so rife for all the progress. So getting to have a moment that could have gone so badly, so many dysmorphias could have been born from it.
Oh yeah,
so much sadness. Like who adultifies a child like that? Like it was such a weird move on behalf of this woman, but it gave me so much. I can really see the roads that led away from that moment and that day.
I love that your mother just took your hand and was like, right, this isn't for us.
This isn't for us. This just cannot.
I absolutely love that story.
This cannot go without.
Because other parents might have gone, okay, then we'll get you braces as soon as we can. And, they would have thought, right, we need to get you the work, and it could have gone a completely.
This could be a great opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't know what could have happened actually, if she hadn't have done that. But also, having a gap. And my friend and actress Uzo Aduba speaks about this so beautifully as well. She's like, that is so much part of your culture in your face. That is part of your inheritance. That is part of your ancestry. And are you saying that basically that needs to be like washed away, tampered with, erased in order to do the work? Like, there's something inherently problematic in that. There's a phrase in French which is "dans du bonheur." I've butchered the French there. Sorry, all French people. But it means lucky teeth,
Teeth,
and actresses like Brigitte Bardot were, really deemed, so alluring and so beautiful with that, particular feature. So it's not also just, something that belongs to you as someone who's from the African diaspora necessarily. But in my experience, that's what it was speaking to. It was like, we don't want you to have your ancestors' like features, essentially.
Right, yeah.
And so many layers were happening in that particular moment.
What is interesting for me talking to you is hearing about the people that have encouraged you throughout your life.
Yeah.
Like you said, you always just felt so supported. Like your parents were never like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Or even your book agent that said, write a book.
Yeah.
There's been so many people along the way that have opened so many doors for you. Is there anyone in particular you can think of that has inspired you or helped you get to where you are today, a person in your life?
I would have to sort of repeat myself and say Anna Scher. Because the amount of people that went through her doors, first and foremost. I mean, Daniel Kaluuya thanked her in his BAFTA acceptance speech, I think back in sort of 2018 or something. Dexter Fletcher, who's now fantastic director, Naomi Harris, who's Bond girl extraordinaire and everything in between. Reggie Yates, who's a good friend of mine. We did our first gig together on Desmond's. Wow. Can we imagine? For all the millennials in the house.
Oh,
Desmond, what a show. Reggie, Kathy Burke.
Wow.
Everyone who went there talks about having felt like they were really seen at a time where it maybe wasn't the case if you'd chosen to do acting, that you would be able to find a space where people were like, yeah, not just the job, not just the talent, but also the world and you, and like, who are you? She was so interested in young people. She never spoke down to you. She would use words that I would leave and go, I have no idea what that meant, but I'm going to find out because Anna said it and it made me feel good, in the moment. And she created an ethos there that I think all those people I've just listed and more still hold to this day, which is acting when it's easy is like easy and anyone can do it. When it's hard, that's when you become the actor. When the work isn't there, when things are feeling a little bit more bare-boned, that's what makes the actor. She also never allowed us to use the words fame or star. And there were kids who were going off and doing huge TV shows, huge films. And when they were done, they would come back to class and they would just reintegrate. And that was it. There was no heralding of the person who's gone and, done the movie. There was such a grounding there that I literally cannot do the work that I do without that bedrock, that ethos that she made for all of us. And actually, if I think about it, that's probably where my writing, in terms of writing for characters and for stage and screen, came from, because she would put on something called the Festival of Plays, which was kids as young as 6 up to adults in their 40s and 50s, like throughout the whole, throughout the theatre, throughout the different classes that she had, would get the opportunity to put their hand up if they wanted to do a play, be selected, write a play and cast it from your group, and then put it on in a festival at the end. Like if you were the best one, I think, everyone rated you out of 10 or something at the end. And you would then get to see your work performed alongside like these really grown up, talented, experienced people. And I remember teaming up with a friend of mine when we were about 9 and 10, and we wrote a play about a killer doll who came to life.
You wrote Child's Play before it was even Child's Play.
Yes, I did. And I'm waiting for those royalties.
I did.
Still to this day. It was like a doll that like turned evil whenever you sang Ring a Ring of Roses.
Amazing.
What I mean,
that's actually pretty good.
Paging Dr. Freud, paging all the doctors to help with that. But it was amazing because all the kids had to listen to you. You took them like down to this little green room area and told them the idea, and it would all be improvised because Anna Shares was very much based on improvisation. You would tell them each scene, how you wanted it to go. Sometimes you could put yourself in it. Like, when I think back now, it was so beautifully anarchic and probably a golden age of theatre making, or certainly a golden age for performers, because there was no social media, there was no, camera phone. Like, if I was to play back that play now, I'd go, this is absolutely awful. But it can live in my mind as this experience. And quite honestly, like, that kind of anarchy just doesn't have a space really in the same way now. But it was really formative.
So this child that was writing about killer dolls, who were you watching? Who were you watching as you were growing up that you just absolutely idolised? Was there anybody in the acting world that you were like, oh my goodness, this is who I want to be like, or anyone that inspired you?
In terms of just recent news, someone who I didn't realise was such a huge influence on me is, she converted to Islam, Sinead O'Connor, and was known as Shahada Sakat. But she made such a profound impact on me. And I was actually really devastated at the news of her passing.
Yeah.
I remember so clearly her face, her luminous face with her shaved head and black polo neck with a black background in the Nothing Compares to You video, which would have been like early 90s.
Yes.
And I just remember watching it really clearly. I remember watching it and thinking, she's talking to me. And I guess that meant at that time, I realize now, maybe like she felt like an outsider. I could just tell. She wasn't like the other women necessarily on MTV.
No, definitely not.
It was like a punch in the chest, wasn't it? It was like a defibrillating kind of feeling. I remember watching
So
a bit
powerful.
like, a bit like, when I saw, Nirvana's, first single on MTV, and I was just like, whoa.
Yeah, what is this?
Whoa, what is this?
Yeah.
I was like, that's who I think I am, and there were so few icons sometimes at that time in my life that represented who I was, looked like who I was, doing the things that I maybe dreamt of doing, again, in a subconscious way. And she just represented someone who was just so talented, so powerful, but yet so vulnerable, and clearly was aligning herself with an outsider energy, or with like a left field sort of energy. And I just thought, wow. And then later on in life, her first, one of my friends' older sisters had her first album, and me and my friend would play it, and her voice was so haunting and again, visceral. Again, when you're young and you can't necessarily understand the lyrical content of something, there's that pre-verbal communication in the sound of someone's voice. I mean, you're a singer. And I remember her track Black Boys on Mopeds hitting me again between the eyes, because it was this protest music that again felt very accessible. I was like, wow, she's singing about difficult things. She's singing about the more troubling aspects of life. But she's also like got a cassette tape of it. It's not like in a basement somewhere. I'm like, we bought this from, a shop, and she's making this popular. She's putting this out to a lot of people. And again, registering that felt important. And then when she passed away, and I sort of had all these retroactive nostalgic thoughts about her, I was like, wow, what I really love about her legacy is that she did things that were difficult at a moment where she could have so easily chosen to do things that were easy. She spoke truth to her power at a point where she could have just kept those hits pumping,
I mean, I wouldn't expect you to say Sinead O'Connor. I don't know what I was expecting you to say.
No, I don't know what I was going to say.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah. It really hit me, her passing away. And also her passing had created, again, this dialogue of like, we must be kind, like we mustn't, bully people who are vulnerable. We're so sad she's gone. And it's like, well,
it's always too late, isn't it?
It's always too late. And again, what I say to the young people, young actors that I talk to now is, make your life about so many other things than just the work. Because, the people who were tearing her down, the people who were name calling and doing all kinds of things that I deem to be very wrong, probably don't have any idea of what it takes to do what she did, or what people like her have done. And she's human, she is a human being. And so making your life about so many other things other than the thing that you're doing hopefully gives you a way to navigate intense scrutiny like that.
It's an important lesson to share. Very important lesson.
Yeah.
Before we leave today, I really need to talk about your style, Zawe, because firstly, you're sitting in front of me. You look amazing.
Do you today? I just threw this.
But I have been stalking you.
I wanted to make your style. God, you look amazing.
I have been stalking you online. And
No, you have not.
your red carpet
You're
looks.
Fleur East. I love you.
They're always fabulous, though.
Oh, thank you.
You don't ever play it safe. You wear a lot of bold patterns, bold shapes. It's very out there. I want to know, how does your style help you express yourself? Because like you said, you've always been this child. You came into the world with all this energy.
Yeah.
You know, you've got real strength about you. How do you express that through your style? Because you're not shy. You're not shy when it comes to the red carpet.
Oh, thanks, Fleur. Well, that was a journey. You know, that was really a journey. And again, like I did talk about one of my first red carpet experiences in my book. Again, I'm not here to publicise my book. It's just
The
a
book is
lot of
available right now. Become the 20th person.
If you want to be the
to read
20th or
it.
21st person to read Character Breakdown, please, you know, find it. I think it's very much off the shelves. But my point is all the realizations I made through that book, you know, being on the red carpet and that whole first head above the parapet moments in terms of showing yourself to cameras at an event where you've chosen an outfit. You know, the whole process of it is just so weird when you kind of start breaking it down. But those first times were so frightening. I was like, this is just wearing clothes.
Yeah.
But it did feel like everything had to be encompassed in that moment, like who you are, what you want to say, the artist you have to be, like, you know, the artist you want to be, like, so many different things. And I don't think I chose very wisely, really, at the beginning. So, I mean, stylists are great, aren't they? I don't want to say it was just all me. The confidence to, you know, rock all the craziness is maybe mine. But, you know, I met at one point a fantastic stylist, Steph Wilson, and we started to work together, and she just said, who do you, like, what's the kind of artist you think you are, and how can we represent that? And it was the first time I'd really had that conversation. And I was like, I suppose I'm, you know, want to be bold. So yeah, when I started to have that kind of dialogue, it just started to flow. Because then you go, it doesn't matter what people are going to say necessarily afterwards. That's what I was very concerned about with at one point. This is about stepping out and going, did I do it authentically? I always feel good if I know that I've just somehow been true to who I believe I am, and rocked out and represented myself.
I love the self-expression.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad you turned up today. I've loved talking to you, learning about your
Fleur.
story, your experiences, and your character breakdown. I'm going to be number 21 that buys the book now. Zawe, I'll be number 21.
No, honestly, it's such a joy to talk to you. You have an amazing platform. Your spirit and energy and what you stand for is so wonderful. And I want to align myself with that. And again, just feeling like this is an extension of a way that I'm able to speak to people at the beginnings of their own journey is really important to me. So thank you for letting me come and ramble.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. If we want to follow you on socials, where can we do that?
Oh my goodness. I suppose at my Instagram that I never post on ever. But, you know, flip through the archive.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's at Zawe.
At Zawe. You managed to get that?
Just
There was
saying.
no other Zawe?
We're always trying to work towards one
pretty
name
good.
status, aren't we?
That's powerful.
Prince,
Zendaya, Prince, Zawe.
Zawe.
Yes.
Madonna, Zawe. No, yeah, that's about right.
Incredible. I love it. Thanks for listening to Shaping Success, a Simply Be podcast. If you like what you've heard, please give us a follow and a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to your podcasts. Shaping Success is a Folding Pocket production.